morning. It's Wednesday, May 29th, 2024, and welcome to Morning Jen, a daily show offering fresh takes on legal and political news over coffee, Monday through Friday. We have so much to talk about today, from Dark Brandon making an appearance down in New York to crazy Judge Eileen Cannon in Florida making a ridiculous yet helpful ruling in the Trump documents case. Okay, now, of course, we're going to get to the main event, which was closing arguments in Donald Trump's first criminal trial. But first, we need to stop off in a place I'd like to call Crazy Town. That is, unfortunately, sorry, Beverly, Massachusetts, you get that label today. That is a location where now infamous film star Richard Dreyfuss went into a bigoted rant attacking women who supported the Me Too movement, as well as transgender kids and their parents. While there were apologies issued, they were done by the venue, this theater, not by Mr. Dreyfuss. And it makes me wonder, what is it about these days where there are people who have had years of success and privilege, namely this guy, Richard Dreyfuss, who decides now to attack some of the most vulnerable members of society? Does he feel in his advanced years that his own personal power is lapsing? Or is it some kind of nostalgia for a, hopefully, bygone era where men, mostly white, powerful, wealthy men, had control of our lives, experienced freedom themselves, but repressed us? And it feels like, not just with the presidency of Donald Trump, that a lot of these kinds of folks decided to kind of crawl out from under their rock with these antiquated ideas. But it's not just, of course, actors with making, this actor making a bigoted comment at the theater, but it's actually also, as you know, the Supreme Court justices who are doing the same thing quietly with their written opinions, taking away our rights. For example, with the Dobbs decision, our right to choose how to control our own reproductive freedom, which is, of course, economic freedom as well. Now, I have to tell you that we have to make yet one more stop in Crazy Town, because similar to this rant that we just discussed by Richard Dreyfuss, we had RFK Jr., who is running for the U.S. presidency. We had RFK Jr. actually make a statement saying that he condemns taking down Confederate statues. Now, why in the world, more than, 100 and what is it now? Almost 150 years since the Civil War, since the end of slavery, would you want to cherish and lift up traitors to this nation? It's very divisive, but of course, similar to what Dreyfuss was doing and what Donald Trump and his Republican Party are doing, they are trying to prey on a kind of nostalgia, a repressive nostalgia where women and all minorities are not free, but where a certain class of people are. So that is my stops in Crazy Town. Now, let's talk about something more positive. I mentioned at the top of the show that Dark Brandon made an appearance in New York. And what I mean by that was not that Joe Biden himself showed up outside of the courthouse where Donald Trump is being tried. However, after there is a verdict in the case, President Biden himself, apparently from the White House, is going to make a speech, not a political speech, mind you, but talk about what it would mean if Donald Trump is convicted, what it means for our society and for our nation that something so unprecedented happened, but demonstrating, I hope that he says, demonstrating that no one is above the law. Now, let's talk about, though, sort of the Dark Brandon side of things. We had or the Biden, I shouldn't say we, I mean we as in people like me who are joyful about this, we had a delightful treat outside of the courthouse today in Lower Manhattan, right during closing arguments for the Donald Trump criminal trial. And what that was surrogates for and actual members of the Biden-Harris campaign standing before microphones in front of the press talking about why Donald Trump is a crook and unfit for future office and, of course, past office. Unlike Richard Dreyfuss, there is a film star who is still acclaimed and still respected, and that is Robert De Niro, quintessential New York tough guy. And you may remember De Niro, not only a serious actor, also has made some appearances on the sketch comedy show Saturday Night Live, and he actually played Robert Mueller, a one-time Donald Trump nemesis, the special counsel who was looking into the Russia collusion case. We'll talk about that some other day. But it wasn't just actors who are sort of pro-democracy, anti-criminal, anti-Trump, who were speaking in front of the courthouse on behalf of the campaign. But we also saw Michael Fanone, who was one of the D.C. officers who was injured terribly during the attack on the Capitol. In addition to Officer Fanone, we also had Harry Dunn down there, another officer, brave officer who was there during the attack on the Capitol. And what Fanone said, which I did watch, was to remind us of how Donald Trump's words encouraged this insurrection. And it does remind us how absolutely batty it would be to elect this man into office again. And remember, Donald Trump has said on the campaign trail that were he elected, he would pardon all of the rioters, including those people who attacked Fanone. And if you think about this, the idea that the Republican Party, the party of Abraham Lincoln, would be having this man who supported a violent insurrection, who refused to allow for a peaceful transfer of power, to lift him up as their candidate is still, to me, absolutely astonishing. Okay, so since we're talking about kind of a contrast between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, in that Joe Biden is, having his campaign show a backbone, standing up. When we are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. We see this. It's fantastic. But I want to back up a little bit and talk more substance, provide more contrast. And that is, as you know, 2 days ago was Memorial Day. And what did President Joe Biden do on Memorial Day? Well, he visited the tomb of the unknown soldier. And he also, last week, was careful to remember and to honor the violent death at the hands of police of George Floyd. And there are things that Biden does on a daily basis, showing empathy, showing respect, showing care for people and for the democracy. And, of course, being Memorial Day for people who make the ultimate sacrifice in times of war. Okay, so contrast that to what Donald Trump did. On Memorial Day, Donald Trump came out with a Truth Social. I could just call it a tweet. I hate to even call it a truth, where he wished a happy Memorial Day to human scum. And then he went on to lambaste Judge Merchan and also to redefame my dear friend E. Jean Carroll. the person for whom the person he sexually assaulted in the 1990s and defamed her, and he lost 2 trials. One where the jury awarded him, like $6 million related to defamation alone, and the other one, $83+ million for defamation and for this sexual assault. And he went on his Truth Social and attacked her. And the good news there, it's terrible that she is having to relive this, and all of us seeing that, that this is the punishment you pay, that even if someone has been found liable by a jury, that he thinks he can go on and still attack a woman, call her a liar. What this does is it makes it harder for women to come forward, right? So this is a little bit of a callback that I'm doing to what Richard Dreyfuss did, attacking the Me Too movement. Well, so is Donald Trump. He's not just attacking E. Jean Carroll, but he's attacking Me Too, and he's attacking all women who find the courage to come forward. So the good news here, though, is that that we know that on Monday, Maggie Haberman of the New York Times tweeted out that Robbie Kaplan, one of E. Jean Carroll's attorneys, mentioned that she hadn't ruled out bringing yet another case against Donald Trump. You would think that over $90 million in judgments would make him finally be quiet and not violate the law. But apparently, there may be no price that will keep him silent, because his ego is such and his misogyny is such that he does not want to ever lose to a woman. He wants women to be absolutely beneath him. Okay, another contrast, and also, should I mention, as someone who deeply respects the relationship between Joe Biden and his wife, that Joe Biden has been an utterly loyal husband. He is so supportive of his wife, and of course, we know that he tragically lost his first wife and 2 children in a terrible accident, and that then married Jill and has stayed with her for a very long time. Whereas, in contrast, Donald Trump is on his 3rd marriage, and we have learned through the course not just of this hush money payment trial, but just his history, that he has had repeated affairs, including cheating on his current wife, Melania, while she was pregnant with Karen McDougal, and after she gave birth with Stormy Daniels. So, it's hard to see him as a loyal person. He's loyal to no one but himself. He is not loyal to democracy. He is not even loyal to his own family. He would throw anyone under the bus to make himself look better. I don't see how this is someone who has the kind of character to be president. Another contrast that we should bring up, that I want to bring up in the news, that's come out between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, is that during his presidency so far, Joe Biden has created 15 million jobs, and the NASDAQ is at an all-time high. Now, I want to point out that the stock market is not the whole or real or full economy. But remember that Donald Trump said that if Joe Biden is elected, the markets would crash. Well, quite the opposite has happened. And while Biden had created 15 million jobs, Donald Trump had presided over the nation, losing 2.9 million jobs. Okay, so that brings us to the highlight of the day yesterday, and that was the closing arguments in the, as I like to refer to it, the first criminal trial of Donald Trump. Now, I have a habit of using shorthand and referring to it as a hush money trial, because to really describe what this case is, it's a very long, very drawn out sentence. But let's do that now. Let's talk about what he is on trial for, quite briefly, and what happened in court yesterday. Now, remember, this is a state criminal trial. Donald Trump was indicted on 34 counts of violating a New York statute that prohibits causing to be made or making false records false business records with an intent to defraud and to make it a felony. It doesn't. The intent isn't just an intent to defraud, but it's an intent to further or cover up another crime. Okay, so. What happened yesterday at trial was that the defense, the lawyer for the defense, Todd Blanche, made his closing argument, and after Todd Blanche was the attorney for Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor's office, who presented his closing arguments. That was done a little before 8 p.m. last night. What that means is today at 10 a.m., court will begin again, and the judge will instruct the jury. And this is one of the, if not the most important thing in a trial, because this is where the judge says to the jury, first, here's what the burden of proof is, that it's on the prosecution, and explains what beyond a reasonable doubt means. And then the judge is going to go through the actual jury instructions that go through each of the elements of law, saying that if the jury believes X, then they will find Y, that Donald Trump is guilty, and that they need to go through these steps for all 34 counts. Now, I am going to avoid getting into the weeds and the details because I just want to give you my fresh take on this and my predictions. Okay. And my commendations of what happened today, and then we'll wrap, and then I'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow when I don't think by Thursday we will have a verdict, but I expect one by Friday, at any rate. So my key commendations and predictions are as follows. Commendations: I think that the prosecution gave a brilliant closing argument. It was over 4 hours long. It centered around a timeline that the attorney walked through step by step. In contrast, Todd Blanche was kind of all over the place. He was trying to just do all he needs to do, which is raise a reasonable doubt. I'll return to that in one moment. So let's focus on what was so strong about the prosecution. And remember, they went last. What was so strong about the prosecution was telling a story in chronological order using a timeline that was shown in slides to the jury. Now, mind you, the jury will not be able to take those slides into the courtroom, but the jury can take notes and is taking notes even during closing arguments. Plus, by giving the jury a sense that the right way to think about this trial and about the evidence is in a timeline means that if you or I were a juror in the jury room, the first thing we would want to do is write down our own timeline and use that timeline to say, okay, which of the facts are not disputed and which of the facts are disputed. And then say, okay, does it matter who we believe on this, or doesn't it? So the jury will be able to say which are the points of contention and what seems more credible. Okay, why is that so important? Additionally, that's because going back to what the defense did, as I said, the defense went first, and all Todd Blanche did was try to poke holes in the prosecution's case, hoping to raise a reasonable doubt. So at least one juror, refuses to convict. Well, to do that, what Blanche did was avoid a narrative, create confusion, and the two things that he focused on, that Blanche seemed to focus on, was Michael Cohen calling him a liar, saying everything he says is a lie and you can't trust him and he's a thief. And secondly, to question and to argue that Donald Trump did not form the intent necessary to convict him for a felony. That if these records were falsified, he did not have the intent to do that, and he certainly did not have the intent, this is Todd Blanche, to commit another crime. So that's all Blanche did. And the problem with that is, by pointing only at Michael Cohen, and calling him a liar and saying that Donald Trump, of course, arguing he didn't have an affair and calling everyone else a liar. You have to believe that everyone's lying but Donald Trump. Okay, so he did not tell a story. He just called Michael Cohen a liar and called Donald Trump a truth teller. Okay, so the problem with that, of course, is that a jury cannot believe it's credible that Donald Trump didn't have this affair and is not going to find it credible that everybody is lying. And it's going to not find it credible that when you have handwritten notes from the CFO and the controller of the company adding up these calculations that he didn't know it when he was a micromanager and so on. So, they may be starting to question, how are we sure? What is the evidence that we have that Donald Trump knew about this? Knew that these were false records. Okay, so that's the Todd Blanche side of things. But let's go back to the prosecution and then again wrap things. The prosecution, when it made its narrative, as it went along, telling the story of this happened and then that happened and this happened, the prosecution stopped off and dealt with every contentious piece of the factual narrative. And in doing so, made a mockery of the defense. And I'm just going to highlight one point. In the defense's case, both in the closing argument and in witness testimony, there is a huge contradiction. Donald Trump's lawyers, Todd Blanche, he is trying to argue that Michael Cohen stole money from the reimbursement payments that he got. That he got reimbursed for a variety of things, including for some tax services to rig a poll, and that he didn't fully pay back the vendor. Okay, so that argument is that he was reimbursed. But at the same time, and that he's a thief. But at the same time, the defense is arguing the complete opposite, that the money that Michael Cohen got every month, $35,000, was to pay him, to compensate him. It was a retainer for legal services that he performed. It can't be both. It's one or the other. And if I were a juror, that would sit with me and bother me and make me question all of the other contradictions and the parts of the defense's case that just don't make sense. My prediction is a conviction, but we shall see. We will find out hopefully by Friday, but of course, I don't expect any later than next week. Thanks so much, and we will see you tomorrow.